With the help of Hashem, we are learning Beitzah Daf Vav. We left off on Daf Vav all the way on top of the Amid. We're going to begin learning about whether one is allowed to bury a corpse on the first day of Yom Tov, whether one can bury a corpse on the second day of Yom Tov, whether we can make a burial. This is a very sugya. This is a sugya that's very negeya, lamaisa, tragically. And then we will right away revisit again the rule of an egg that was laid on the first day of Yom Tov, going back to the difference between whether you are allowed to eat it, to move it, to handle it on the second day of Yom Tov versus an egg that's laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, whether you can handle or eat it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. We're going to have a new shita that we did not have until now, and that will close the sugya of an egg. And from there, we're going to move on to a similar but different topic, and that is, what's the status of a chick that's hatched from a shell? Same thing on Yom Tov. Rav says it's asr. We'll speak out why would it be asr. Shmuel or another gear says Rabbi Yechanan holds that it's mutter. Now, Bachlal, according to Rabbi Yehuda's broader application of muktzah, there is a rule that muchan la'adam lo ya'ava muchan la'klavim. If something was prepared for human consumption, automatically it means it was not going to be used for animals, because why would people waste something that could be consumed for humans on animals? We will see whether we say the opposite as well. And finally, the final topic of today's daf will be a statement that Rav made that's enigmatic, that has to be clarified. The words are that Beitzah im yitziyasa nigmara, that an egg upon its exit from the mother, from the hen, then does it become fully formed. And we're going to have many different understandings of what Rav means to say with that statement. What's going to be fascinating today is that we are all familiar, we're going completely off topic, with something called mekachtos, that there are times that after a sale is made, transacted, and we notice that there was some information that was completely unknown, or we had the wrong information. There are times that the sale can be, so to say, completely rescinded. It can become completely nullified. There are times that there is like a semi-mekachtos. A semi-mekachtos means, I, so to say, had wrong information. So the difference between what I thought and what is, that money difference has to be returned to me. But the sale itself cannot be completely undone. And we will learn when we say A and when we say B. And a lot more. So let us start on the Vav, Amid Aleph, Mamash, all the way on top of the Amid, Amar Rava. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'ar kohen v'dvar. Amar Rava, mace, regarding a corpse that is awaiting burial. I want to say right away, doesn't mean that that the mace passed away on Yom Tov. Doesn't mean that the mace already passed away prior to Yom Tov. That will make a difference. But let's just first begin. A mace, if there's a corpse that is awaiting burial, says Rava, b'yom tov rishon, on the first day of Yom Tov, even though a yid may not make the burial, obviously we are violating many avos, malachos. Let's just begin with digging a hole in the ground, okay? Then yisasku by amamim. It should be done, it must be done through goyim. Amir ala'akum, telling a goy to do something that a yid may not, is asan midrabanan. Different understandings of how we view it. Ukiyadua that the Alter Rebbe shita of Amir ala'akum is mitzad shlichus, even though ain't shlichus la'akum, but yeh shlichus la'akum l'chumra. Shlichus makes it a very serious rabbinic violation. Nevertheless, kavod hameis, and I want to emphasize kavod hameis is because, as we'll see, especially if the person passed away prior to Yom Tov, before they had refrigeration or freezers, a body, Hashem made a chesed. We just learned that a body decomposes. So the type of attachment that's unhealthy after there is a passing, people cannot afford to have. Let me keep the mace because it smells very bad. And on the other hand, it's not in the dignity of the one who passed away for his body to remain exposed, decomposing. So it's very important for us to bury as soon as possible, aside of there being a mitzvah saseh, to bury on the day of the passing when possible.
Can you also say it's for the community? It's a community.
There's also, he's saying it's also for the people. There's a human dignity that it's uncomfortable for the people. So we're going to come back halacha l'maisa, whether on the day, whether it passed away a day prior, but even on the first day, bury, but you can't violate an isa d'oraisa. Amira la'akim, you do it through a goy. Most going back from the beginning all the way into the poskim point out no one is speaking about Shabbos because Shabbos is more chamor. Whether we view Shabbos more chamor because it's the Isur Kares versus Yom Tov Malkis, whether it's because on Yom Tov B'chlal we find concerning Oichel Nefesh certain things that may be done, and noch mitoich shehutra l'tzoyrech, we'll explain what that means soon. So there's more lenience for Yom Tov. We only say this for Yom Tov. However, let's use the girsa of the Bach who takes out the word mace, the Yom Tov Sheni, regarding burying. That's how this is linked to our sugya on the second day of Yom Tov. Here says Rava, Yisasku boy Yisrael. Wow. A Yid can do it himself. Many understand dafka not through a goy. There's an inyan that a Yid should be buried by a Yid. So it's not that if there is no Amida La'akum option, you are allowed to do it. Many understand, let a Yid bury. Now, Chedra, this fits so much in that which we ended up learning in the last year. What did we learn? Remember, Rav made 3 statements. And Rava paskined that we follow Rav bein l'kula bein l'chumra. Rav differentiated between a Beitzah that's noilad in the first day Yom Tov. Rav says that you are allowed to eat it on the second day Yom Tov. Versus Rav saying that if a Beitzah was noilad on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you may not eat it or handle it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah, we paskin, is viewed as a Yoima Arichta. We're going to revisit that soon. We're going to chazer it soon. 2 days of Galus began with us having a suffix. We don't know. So we don't know. There's only really one day Yom Tov. Especially we said, now we established a calendar. Now we do know. So we can be so lenient. Vafilu, now here's the chab. Comes along Rava and he adds that even though regarding the Beitzah we view Rosh Hashanah as a Yom Arichta, Vafilu b'shnei yomim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah. Wow, that we don't forget, guys. Even when it came to the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, we could, right? There is a Havamina. There is a way of looking at the second day Rosh Hashanah also as only a Sfeika the Yom. We don't view it that way. We don't view it that way in an inconsistent way. When it comes to the importance of burying a mace, second day Rosh Hashanah, here we will view second day Rosh Hashanah like every other second day of Yom Tov. Wow. And we may bury, or we must bury. Masha Enken Beitzah, just to make it clear, like we learned above, that Menegea Beitzah, we paskin that Noilda Bezu, Asura Bezu. And now we're going to introduce a new shita that we never had until now. It's introduced over here to explain how Rava was even able to be lenient regarding burying a mace on the second day Rosh Hashanah, because you should know that the Nahardoi hold that even a Beitzah on Rosh Hashanah could be handled and eaten on the second day. We never had that shita above. Remember the third topic, which began on Daf Daled Amud Beis, the Gemara just quoted the Rav and Shmuel the Amri Tarvayu. We didn't have a shita that said the opposite. Now we're learning. There is a shita Nardoi that holds that even the second day Rosh Hashanah is like the second day of Yom Tov in Galus, only a Sfeika the Yoima, which allows us to be leaning in by the mace. So that's why. And Rav Nach follows that Benegeya a mace. The Nardoi applied it even by an egg. And now we have to explain the Nahardoi, because everyone agrees to a Mishnah that we quoted in the last year, that if the Eidim were to come minha mincha ulamayla after they offered the carbon tamid, even though that day remained lamid, the next day was Yom Aleph. Nevertheless, the Chachamim made a takana that we should continue to view that lamid day as it is Yom Tiv. Torah only said to keep one day Yom Tov. Here, there's no Sfeika. Here we know that tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. And even when there's not a Sfeika, we're keeping 2 days Rosh Hashanah. That's the meaning of Yom Arichta. So how can the Nardoi say that even an egg is allowed to be eaten on the second day. So explains the Gemara, because this is what they say. The my daitech, what was the rationale to view both days Rosh Hashanah like a Yom Arichta? Dilma ma'abri leila elul, because in the very rare possibility that the Edom will come after Mincha, and then we won't make Lamed into Yom Aleph. We will leave Elul a 30-day month, and yet keeping that day as Yom Tov. Says the Nardois, it never happened. Ha'amri Rabbi Chinanam Bar Kahana Amarav. Well, I take back the words. Not it never happened. From the days of Ezra and on, it never happened. You know, it's that time when the Edom came afterwards, right? There was a kilkul b'shir. That was the problem. And they were not ma'aberit. So he says, from the days of Ezra, loy motzinu elol me'ubar. Wow. And therefore, since it never happened, then what are you telling me? Just let's go back to what happened. If the Edom would come in Cholomayla, if they would come, then we would keep that day Yontiv, but we would leave it Lamed. And we would paskin that the next day is Yontiv. And therefore, every single year, Yidden that were far away from the Sanhedrin, even though they lived in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't know. They had to take into account that might happen. That is a Yom Arichta. That never happened. That never happened. So since it never happened, the Nardoi say, so then we have to view the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah like a doubt. And not like a Yom Arichta. It never happened.
But you still hold it for 2 days.
You still, everyone holds it for 2 days. Everyone holds it for 2 days. And furthermore, like we learned at the end of the shiur, that Rava, right? That Rava said at the end of the Heyamid Beis, that they even after the Takanas Rabbi Yechon and Ben Zakkai, they also still held 2 days, but it wasn't Lamed and Aleph, it was Aleph and Beis. But the Nardois always still viewed it as a Sveika de Yoimam.
Rabbi,
yes.
Just back up for a second. What's the reason why they would be able to do the Kvura on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, not Ramir Lanachri? Because that would really be Aleph. So wouldn't that be the same issue of bearing on the first day?
After Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Dani, it wasn't Lamed and Aleph. It switched to Aleph and Beis. Still, it doesn't make a difference. No, do you view it as Yom Arichta, or do you view it as Shtei Kedushos? And Rav is saying that we can lean on the Nardois for Kavod Habriyos or Kavod Hameis for both. You're right, both for the corpse and for the people, and view for that the second day as and view the second day as not Yontif, not garnish.
So is it 2 days or 1 day? What do we consider it now?
Now we consider it one long day. And here we have another detail. Amar Marzutra, that this entire discussion regarding burying, whether it is through Goyim, Amir Akum, whether it is directly, is only the Ishtai, only if the corpse, the person passed away prior to Yom Tov. So by the time even the first day comes, there's already a certain amount of the body being decomposed. So there's a greater urgency to bury ASAP. Avoloi Ishtai, if the person just passed away on the first day Yom Tov, or passed away on the second day Yom Tov, don't bury, not even through a goy. Listen to this, don't bury. Machinally, wait, 24 hours you can wait. However, Ravashi disagrees. And Ravashi says, even if there is no urgency on that level, you still bury. And why? My Tama, because Yom Tov, Sheni, Legabe Meis, Tichoil Shavihu Rabbanan. And how do I know that they consider it mamish like a weekday? For that, they didn't say minig avisechem b'yadechem, or we say minig avisechem b'yadeinu. How do I know that? Because I feel lemegas baglima. If there are shrouds that have to be made for the maze, and Kevan here the Rishonim say, even if there are the minimum shrouds, you want to make additional shrouds to give more honor. You are allowed to do it. He's just proving that it's mamish like a weekday, because the fact that we are allowed to do things that are beyond the minimum, or ulamegas va'asa, people used to cut hadassim and put it together with the burial. That was either to give more kavod, to make it like to beautify the casket, or some people say it was to take away the bad odor. These are things that are not essential, and they were allowed to do it on Yom Tov. He's just proving that we consider Yom Tov Sheni like a weekday for this one thing.
Does that apply to today?
So when it comes to today, I want to say like this, that it comes down that Amma says that we bury on the second day Yom Tov. We bury today on the second day Yom Tov. Rav Moshe is the one that wrote a tshuva by saying that all of this came about because they had no refrigeration. There was a decomposing, even though we paskin like Rav Ashi, but you see the machlokas Mar Zutra and Rav Ashi. Mar Zutra says it depends. Rav Ashi says it doesn't depend. So Rav Moshe Tainus Rav Ashi is saying that even if the person passed away boy by yom, that's because people decompose. If there's no freezer, they decompose right away. Imamish, if you go into one hospital room, an hour or two after the passing, there's already a very bad odor. People know what it smells like. Masha'en came now, that's what he claimed. You should not do it. Rav Moshe claims that there are many other chiluls that might happen. Like, how do you come back? Do you come back? The oilam, do you come back from the burial? The bottom line is that by Hasidim, we follow the Ramah. I'm saying right now. And if someone passes away, we make an effort to bury them on the second day Yom Tov. We do Amir La'akum when we could. And other people, non-Hasidim, say the Litvisha crowd, they don't do the burial on the second day of Yom Tov. And there's many other nuances to it. I know that, for example, my mother's mother, she was buried on Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah Chutz La'aretz is the second day Yom Tov. The Rebbe said she passed away before the Rebbe became a Rebbe in the late 40s, but she was buried. The Rebbe instructed for her to be buried. Okay.
So again, the second day Rosh Hashanah, we say no.
Second day Rosh Hashanah, Rava says is like the second day Yom Tov for this day. That burials are none. There are more paskins that we do it, and then there are the current poiskim question mark that, like I explained, because the whole reason is completely not shaykh today. Speaking about the reasons not being applicable, I know that we just learned this. It was last daf or two dafim ago. Called I want to add, if it's not so simple, the big topic, which we should have spoken out then, is that aren't we familiar with another chazal, which is a Mishnah in Idiyos, which the Rambam paskins, that you need to have gadol, you have the new Sanhedrin has to be gadol mimenu b'chachmu b'binyan. Normally we learned so many times that in order for you to change a rule that the prior Beis Din made, you have to gather more people, more wisdom, more chachma, and more age, or more numbers. And what we learned here in Beitzah didn't say that at all. It just says, Sorach minyan acher la'atiroi. So there's a lot about that. And it's a machlekes Ramam and the Ravid. Ultimately, it boils down to if you have a takana that goes against the din Torah, there one can argue it's easier to overturn it. Like, just give me an example. Don't blow shofar. Don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Why shouldn't you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Torah says to blow the shofar. Gezeda daraba, you might end up carrying it. That's a very big gezeda. There are minyan acher, lav dafke, you need to have chachma and minyan. That's how many people approach it that way. But there are many gezedas that are banan that doesn't go against the din Torah. You want to overturn that, even though the reason doesn't exist. You need to have gadol mimenu b'chachma b'minyan. Okay, let's come back over here. Amar Ravina says Ravina. Nowadays, Ravina lived in Bavel, and he lived amongst the Persians. And there was a group of Rishoyim, Rashi calls, that they were called the Chavrei or the Chabarei. I think they were fire worshippers. And they would coerce Yidden to work. Stam. They would force us to work. However, they had a little bit of that acheretz for the religion. So on Yom Tov, we always told them we can't work against our will because it's Yom Tov. If they would see that even for one thing, for burying a mace, we're working, they would say, you can't stichyo, you could work on Yom Tov. So he says, now that we have the Chabarei, then chayshinon, that they should not, the Chabarim should not use the fact that we bury a corpse as a proof that Yom Tov is not that holy, and they're going to invite their coerce us to go work. So therefore, Ravina says that in the bigger picture, one, therefore, should dafka not bury the dead, even on the second day of Yom Tov. Ravina, Rabbi Yosef Kamei de Rav Ashi is the girsa that we have here on the side. And B'shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah. Happens to be, just to add, it wasn't just 2 days Rosh Hashanah, but it was Thursday, Friday Rosh Hashanah. And Chazye Ravina saw the Hava Otzev that Rav Ashi was depressed, was sad. Amalei, Ravina asks Ravashi, Amai Yotzav Mar, why are you in a bad mood? Amalei, I'll tell you why, because I forgot to make an Eruvi Tavshilin. Lo Yesive Eruvi Tavshilin. We're going to learn here, Mesechtes Beitzah, about the Eruvi Tavshilin. Eruvi Tavshilin has to be made the day prior to Yom Tif. In our case, it should have been done on Wednesday sometime. And if you don't make an Eruvi Tavshilin, then you may not prepare food Friday for Shabbos. So he says, I'm otzif because I won't be able to prepare food for Shabbos. And now, by the way, this was Rosh Hashanah. It wasn't Stam Yom Tiv, it was Rosh Hashanah, coming back to the difference, whether you view Yom Tiv, we paskin, Surava paskin, we view Yom Tiv as Sfeika de Yoima. So we can say this, Miman Avshach, it's really only one day, it's either one day or the other. Rosh Hashanah, aside about the Sugya of Mace, we're going to learn it as Yoim Aricha. So Amalei, I don't understand. Why can't you make an Eruv Tavshilin right now? Right now, meaning this year. How would he do it this year? Milei Amar Rava, didn't Rava say, Maniach Adam Eruv Tavshilin the Yom Tov l'chaveiroi? And Rava is speaking about Yom Tov. He's consistent. He passes like Rav. Sfeika de Yoima. Beitzah Shanol de Bezu Muteres Bezu. Umasna, you can make a stipulation. You know what you do, guys? You designate the Eruv Tavshilin on Thursday. And you say, if today is Yom Tiv, then I'm not allowed to make an Eruv Tavshilin on Yom Tiv. What I'm doing now is nothing. But then I can cook Friday for Shabbos, because if today is Yom Tiv, Friday is Choil. If Friday is Yom Tiv, today is Erev Yom Tiv. That's exactly when you make an Eruv Tavshilin. So why are you depressed? Amalei, Ravashi responds to Ravina. Like we said, Mom is beautiful because we view it as Shtei Kedushos. We keep it because of Sveika D'Yoma. But B'Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah, me, Omar, did Rava ever say that? Of course not, because Adarabah Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah is viewed as one Kedusha because of that one scenario where it was taka kept for 2 days, not because of a doubt. They knew the Edom came, and yet they kept 2 days Yom Tiv. But didn't the Nardoim that we just learned on the Avav disagree with that? The fact is that they paskin that even an egg that was laid on the first day could be eaten on the second day. Is the Haraya that they view Rosh Hashanah also as Shtei Kedushos? So Amalei Rav Mordechay to Ravina. Beferish Omar Limar, the master here is Ravashi, that the Loisovar Loha the Nardoi. We don't follow the Nardoi. We do accept what Rava said, that we paskin like Rav, that Rosh Hashanah is viewed ad hayoim hazeh like Kedusha Achas, like Yom Arichto. And that's why Ravashi felt, rightfully so, that he's unable to make Eruv Tavshilin. Now we're going to learn the sugya of Eruv Tavshilin. We know that nowadays we all make the statement that I'm not just doing it for me, I'm doing it for everyone that lives in the city. Was it not done over there? We'll come back to that when we learn the sugya of Eruv Tavshilin. And now we concluded the sugya of an egg that was laid, and we're going to a very similar topic. The egg that we were talking about until now was a non-fertilized egg. It was an egg that one could eat. That was the whole machlekes. Teyachel, loy teyachel. Now we're going to be learning about a fertilized egg. If the rooster only lives in the same village, all of the hens over there are fertilized. That's the halacha. And when that hatches, then you have to shecht it. Of course. Could you shecht a chick that was hatched? Similar issue on Yom Tiv. Begins the Gemara, Itmer Isamar, Itmer Efroyach, Shanel B'Yamtiv, a chick that was hatched on Yamtiv, Weiter Machloikes. Rav says, Asur, we'll explain why in a moment. Shmuel, or Vitemer, Rabbi Yechon, say Mutter. Explains the Gemara, Chaver Freilach. Rav says that it's Asur. You know why Muktzah? Muktzah, Chaver, this is so important. Prior to an egg that's fertilized, being hatched, you, the owner, what would you do with it? Nothing. A egg that could become a chicklet has value if you leave it alone. A chick is like a living being. So that's many of the Rishonim say that even Rab Shimon, who is very lenient when it comes to muktzah, would be moida that the egg prior to hatching is muktzah. So since it's muktzah, even though now it hatched on Yom Tiv, and you're going to go and shecht it, nisht, you can't have it. That's simple. Shmuel or Vitemer Rabbi Yochanan say that it's mutter. How do you explain that? And here the Gemara is very innovative. Says the Gemara, what's their logic? Because hoyel umatir atzmai b'shchita. Explains Rashi, and we spoke this out. We mentioned it. Chevra, a unfertilized egg. If you went ahead and you cracked it open, can you eat it? You know what this is called? It's called a sheretz. And as we also learned that if you remove the chicklet out of the shell, forget about it came out by itself and it didn't open up his eyes. That will repeat in a moment. It's sheretz. So he says like this, either Shmuel or Rabbi Yochanan. The fact that when the fact that when the chick hatches by itself and it comes out, that creates a huge change of status. Prior to it hatching, asur doiraisa, many lavim and eating a sheretz. Now that it hatched, I know you have to shecht it, but even before you shecht it, you are allowed to eat it through shchita. No, it's the hatching of an egg is a halachic status changer by itself. So the fact that it hatching changes its status from it being a sheretz, isur doiraisa, into it being not, you cannot eat it as is, but now you can eat it through shchita. So avada, the hatching, should take it away from being muktzah and make it non-muktzah. That's great. The very fact that when the chicklet hatched, prior to that moment, it was a sheretz. So the hatching changes its status. It takes something that was asur and it makes it potentially mutter. So therefore, what's the issue of Rav Muktzah? Okay, even according to Rab Shimon, okay, but this is as that change, it should remove it from the stand. Now, normally, according to Rabbi Yehuda, migudi iskatzoi, we don't say that. We say that hatching has a koyach, like to transform something from prohibited into permitted.
Did you check the mother at that point? And then you covered for both?
We're going to learn about this soon. We're going to mention it again. Today, we're learning about this chicklet.
I don't understand this rationale. The whole... I said one of the things about muktzah is moiled. This is mamish moiled. Yeah, migu. So how is this...
Because never did we have a scenario that independent of muktzah, there was something that's asur doiraisa, and an event happened, forget about muktzah, that makes it mutter. It's amazing. But you would argue noilad, like it's noilad and it's muktzah. That was it's a big chaptis. Rab doesn't hold of this. Rab doesn't hold of it, but it's a gabaldik chap. And again, it's not that the hatching makes it mutter. You have to shecht it still. And according to some, you have to wait until the eyes open. It doesn't matter. It went from a sheretz, the hatching took it out of a isur, of a doiraisa. So it takes it out of the isur of mutz. Okay. According to you, an egel, a calf that's born on Yontif, everyone agrees, my friends, that it is not muktzah. So why are you saying muktzah? So Amalahu, he answered, what are you talking about? Remember Chulin ben Pekua. Kevin, that answers your question also. When a calf is inside the mother's womb, if you would shech the mother, then the calf would be permissible. How can you say the calf is muktzah? If there is a fertilized egg inside the mother and you shech the mother, that is sheretz. In other words, prior to it hatching, it was never allowed to be eaten. And like we added, since it has value, if you don't break it open, you would not touch it. Muktzah machmas chisar and kiss. Big difference. In other words, the egel was permitted in the case of shechting the mother. The chicklet in the egg, the fertilized one, would never be permitted. It only became permitted now that it hatched. So he says muktzah. That's what Danny was saying. It was designated as in the beginning. It was muktzah. How can the status change in the middle of Yontif? Problem is, if that's the only reason why a calf may be eaten, Right? That's a good question, to the point that Rav did not verbally respond. What's the question? That if the mother is a treifa, the halacha is that if you were to shech the mother that we discover has one of the 18 treifa defects, the din is that the child in the mother will not become permissible. We learned that in Chulin, because it doesn't make sense for you to be mater the child while the egel is in the mother. We view it as a limb of the mother. If the mother remains non-edible, how can that limb become edible? Yet, if the egel is born on Yom Tov, nowhere do we find that egel may not be slaughtered. If the only reason why you can slaughter an egel that was born on Yom Tov, because even while it wasn't the mother, it was edible theoretically by shechting the mother. Here we have a case where shechting the mother will not make it edible. And yet again, nowhere do we find in a Mishnah, in a Beitzah, that such a calf may not be slaughtered. Good, And Rav did an answer. Shasa Krav. And as we know, that Shasa Krav doesn't mean that he felt that he has to retract. He just didn't respond. B'chachma bina. B'chachma, he knew he's right. He didn't have the words for the answer. And now the Gemara is going to challenge. We have answers. Why didn't he give our answer? We had an answer. He should have had it. So Amar, Rabba V'Temer Rav Yosef, my Tamash Krav. Why doesn't he answer? You're right that if a egel is in a treifa, that egel was never going to be permitted for human consumption. It was not shayich. So what? In other words, what do people normally do just to know what the treifa? When people had treifa animals and they know that Yidden, not going to be kosher, that will be the meat that they would feed to dogs or to other animals that they had. So why is it muksa? Something that's designated, my friends, for animal consumption is not muksa. So Amalu Abaye, I'll tell you. A dog cannot eat what? No one would designate an afroyach for a dog by knowing that leave it be, let it hatch, and it's going to be worth a lot more money for human consumption, versus something that's already halachically not fit for human consumption. So it's muchand, it's prepared for animal consumption. So Amalei Abai, I'll tell you why Rav did not give that answer. Let's get going, because hashtam. Now that we have a rule that something that's designated, something that's prepared for human consumption, we say, now when we say, it means Rabbi Yehuda, the ones who have a broader application of muksa, a more chamurdika application of muksa, that way have a muchan leklavim. Where do we find this halacha? The Tanach, Mishnah, and Shabbos, that you can cut up a gourd for animals on Shabbos, and we're going to focus on the second statement. That if a animal died on Shabbos, that's important. If the animal died before Shabbos, if it became a carcass before Shabbos, then of course that was designated for animal consumption. The Mishnah says that if an animal even died on Shabbos, nevertheless, you are allowed to handle the animal by cutting it up and giving it in front of dogs. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no. Asura. Why? Because in other words, since during Ben Hashmashas, the animal did not yet die, in the mind of the owner, animals should be used for human consumption if need be. And when he holds that something that's designated for human consumption is automatically dafka removed from it being used from animal consumption, like it's a waste of money. So therefore, concludes Abaye, explaining why Rav did not give the answer. So muchan leklavim, if something was designated for animals, have a muchan la'adam. No. That's why he didn't have an answer. Because if the mother was a treifa, you can't say it's muchan leklavim. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's muchan leklavim. Yes, it is, but it's not muchan la'adam. So the question remains: why are you allowed to shech the egel? Oh, Malay, this is a rabba, right? This is rabba to Abaya. No, my question stands. My question as to why Rav did not give the answer in what I say is good. Muchan la'adam moida. Something that was designated for human consumption, taka, according to Rabbi Yehuda, lo yava muchan leklavim. And you know why that is? because the chazulei inish loy shadilei leklavim, something that's fit for human beings to eat. Normally, people will not give to their animals. Chazal did not see our crazy generation, but in the normal generation. But muchan leklavim, but if something is fit for animals, we dip into that when we're able to. Have a muchan adam, because the daite de inish, al kol mida de chazilei. A person views all of the potential food items that if I can figure out a way how we human beings can make use of it, we'll dip into it. The opposite, if something is going to be fit for humans, why would you waste that to give it to animals? If you view animals as on a lower rung than people. Gewaltig. And therefore, the kasha is a kasha. The kasha is a kasha. Okay, doesn't mean it was refuted, and you see it clearly over here. Rav, not only is Rav not refuted, but it's a machloikas tanoim. We're not going to refute a Tana. Tanya Kavasa the Rav. We're speaking about a chick was hatched on Yom Tov is Asid, and Tanya Kavasa the Shmuel, or like we said, if that lenient opinion was said by Rabbi Yechanan. And now we learned the Beitzah. Tanya Kavasa the Rav. Here goes the Beitzah. Egel shel noilad be Yom Tov muter. Muter meaning you can shech the egel on Yom Tov. Now that's easy, right? Because it was permitted agavimai. However, the chiddush here is efroyach shel be Yom Tov. Noilad means, my friend, just in other words, it was hatched. Not that it left the hen, that it came out of the shell. Here says the Beitzah asur. Uma hefresh bein zeh lo zeh. These are the words of the Beitzah. That zeh, the egel is muchan agavim b'shchita. Since if you would have slaughtered the mother, which you could on Yom Tov, if the animal would have been inside ben pekua, it would become halachically fit for human consumption. So it's not muksed. V'zeh the chick. Like we mentioned, if you shecht a hen and inside you find an egg that's fertilized, you may not take it out and say it was in the mother. It has a din of a sheretz. And now, or like the Shita said by Rabbi Yechanan, that egel shenoilad be Yom Tov, that is taka muter. No one debates that. But a frech shall be Yom Tov, even an afrech is also muter. I muktzeh, my tama. Zeh muchan agav imoi, mamish the words we had. V'zeh matir atzmoi b'shchita. In other words, you're right. Until it was hatched, it's not only muktzah. Until it was hatched, it's an iser darais of sheretz. And the Torah views the act, the mitzias, the reality of the shell hatching, of it coming out. It has a whole new change of status. It goes from Isser to Heted. If it can go from Isser, Doiraisa, to Heted, it can also remove itself on Yom Tov from Muktzah. Let's go weiter. Tana Rabban on another detail of Fresh and Yom Tov. First of all, the Tanakh here holds Asur, like we learned above, din of Muktzah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, we quoted that 2 days ago, another nuance, that even when a Efroyach hatches on a weekday, I know there's no muktzeh issue, but don't say, not a sheretz. It doesn't become a non-sheretz right away. Meaning, even if you shecht it, if the chicklet did not yet open its eyes, asur lefi sheloi nispatchu einav.
Once you open his eyes?
Once it opens his eyes.
What is that so important? Means it's alive now?
It means it's alive. It means when it opens its eyes, now it's considered a living being. Now, I want to say like this, the word sheretz is also a living being, but it's still considered as it was before. There's a phase of birth. Now, we never learned this when we learned about human birth in Masechtas Nida, but when it comes to a chicklet, the opening the eyes is a big thing.
Like a baby crying.
Kevin is adding his own Torah like a baby crying. It's all Zion. Okay, so now the parents, now they know they're in for business over here. Okay, weiter. Come on, the Tanya, based on a pasuk in Shemini, where the Torah says the chol hasheretz hashoyretz alaretz. Right, among all the creeping things that creep up on the earth, the Torah says one may not eat. So there's a certain repetitive nature of the formulation of God Almighty's holy words. So says the Tana l'rabos efroichim, that even though they are out of the shell, but if shaloi nispatchu einayim, they are still in the status of a sheretz. Come on, Kirabi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Kavanaki. Says the Gemara Beitzah, Amarav Hun Amarav. This is the final sugya of today. Now he makes a statement that is not clear what he means, but here's the statement. Beitzah, im yitziyasa, a egg upon its leaving the mama, the hen, then nigmara, then it becomes fully formed. What does he mean by that? What does Rav mean? Ilay means im yitziyasa nigmara, that only when it leaves the hen, then do we view it as fully formed, and therefore what? And therefore, guys, let's say that he's not speaking about a fertilized egg, but we're speaking about a non-fertilized egg. And there's another whole topic. Let's begin speaking about this. There's something called Eiver Minachai, which is even awesome for goyim. Here you're taking an egg that is part of the mama. First of all, how is it pativ? Forget about it. How's it pativ? So maybe he meant to say that enechanami, that it's only viewed as something that may be eaten with milk when it's an egg. An egg means when it's a fully formed egg. Before it being a fully formed egg, you can't eat it with milk. And you can argue if you can't eat it with milk, that's the topic. So then maybe you should not be allowed to eat it at all. Could be. Okay. No, which means if Rav meant to imply that that if the egg is inside the mother's stomach, then asur al-achla b'chalav nisht, not so. Says befedish v'hatanya hashechles tanagoylos umatzaba beitzim gemurais. Guys, just want to know what that means. Beitzim gemurais means not the white, the yolk. It means that if the yolk is complete, then muteres lo achlam b'chalav, it already has a status not as part of the mama. We're speaking about non-fertilized egg. You don't even need the white. You don't even need the white. There's a whole big, that's what I'm saying. The shot here, we paskin, it means that if the yolk is complete, then you can eat it with chalav. So it's not that Rav is not going to argue. Rav could, but Rav here is not arguing, right, with this Tanach. Elo im yitziyasa, the first white line, nigmara, meaning, here we go, therefore, umuteres la'achla b'yamtiv. If, guys, of course, if it was late before Yamtiv, like before Yantiv, you can eat it on Yantiv. Meaning, asura, that if it was slaughtered on Yantiv, what are we talking about? Right? You can slaughter on Yantiv. And you find in the innards of the mama, you find a egg. But the very fact that it was not born, it means that it was never completed. It was never completed. Maybe if it's never completed, then you should not be allowed to eat it. Why not? Why not? Hachana daraba, hello. What does Hachana daraba tell you? That for something to be consumed, that item needed to be designated for, prepared for consumption on a weekday. Now, I know you shechted on the first day Yom Tov. Problem is not that it wasn't yet completed. It was not, you don't designate it a non-completed thing. I don't know what kind of picture. Oh, Kevin found pictures, Gavaldik. The only problem with Kevin's pictures here, for those who see it, is that all of this is about fertilized, beautiful little chikalak, and we're speaking dafka about non-fertilized over here. Because if it's fertilized, it's sheretz. Okay. Oh, so let's say, so does Rav mean to say that if you shech the chicken on Yom Tov, and you find the egg inside, that Rav is telling you that you can't eat it on Yom Tov? And again, the only reason would be because we subscribe to what we call hachana daraba nish. No, again, we learned in a Beitzah that no, even if you follow hachana daraba, it's good because whatever this is, it was prepared to be eaten prior. Again, the words gemurais means as long as the yolk is completed, mutarais la'achlan b'yamtiv.
I'm sorry, what do you mean the egg yolk is completed?
So you need pictures. So you know, when the egg begins to develop in the beginning, it's not separated, the yellow and the white. If you remember in Chulin, I think we had 3 simanim. How do you know that the egg came from a kosher species? One of them is that the yolk is inside and the white is outside.
The egg starts to develop from the yolk.
The egg from the yolk. Otazoi. Remember, we also learned that interestingly that a kosher egg has to be dafka, not symmetric. Remember that? that if it's sharp, if it's pointing both sides, if it's rounded, and then there was a third siman that escaped my mind right now. Anyways, coming back over here. Now the Gemara says, this is a big liner. The Gemara says, maybe you're right that we just quoted the Brais on the second wide line, that if you find in the egg that you shechted on Yom Tov, in the hen, non-fertilized eggs, you can eat them. Maybe this is never written in a Mishnah. Yes, it's written in a Braisa, but maybe, let's say, by the fact that it's not mentioned in the Mishnah means that the Rebbe rejects this Pshita, that it is subject to a Machlokes Tanoim, and Rav would side with the Mishnah. That's what this line means. Says the Gemara, no, because this is inferred in our Mishnah. No, it's not written explicitly, but so what? Hanami Tanina, you know which Mishnah, Chevra? Our Mishnah. Beitzah shenolda b'yamte b'shama yoimim teyachel u'beisil loimim loiseyachel. Says the Gemara, beautiful. V'at kan loipligi b'shama beisil elo b'nolda. Fakert. Why did the Mishnah emphasize nolda? What does that imply? Aval b'me'ei imoim divrei hakol sheruyim. So the Mishnah and the Braisa also ascribe to that. Rav is not going to dispute it. And one second, maybe Beisilal will be machmer afilu b'me'ei iman nami yasri. Why did our Mishnah speak about being laid? Noilda, v'haidik tani noilda. Right, the classical comeback is lohidiacho koichon de beishamayim. Right, koich de teiradifa tafilu noilda nami shari. No, nisht, not elo hadatanya. When it says in a Braisa that if it's subject to a machlekes b'sham and b'silul, then I'll be trapped. Then I'll be stuck. Because it says in a Braisa, hashoich the satana goylos, umatza ba beitzim gemurais, then mutarais la'achlan b'yamtev. And what does that apply? It implies that if it's laid on yamtev, you may not eat it. Now, who says that if it's laid on yamtev, you may not eat it? Only Beisilul. Yet this Tana says that if you found it inside the mother, you could eat it. So who's going to be the author of this Braisa? So Mani, if you would argue that there is such an argument, is araya that even Beisilul is moida, that if you shech the hen on Yom Tov and you find eggs, if they are gemurais, halachically you are allowed to eat them. So Rav did not mean to make a statement that would argue with these Tanoim. Elo, second to last line, I'll tell you what the Rav means when it says im yitzi asa nigmaram, that when it leaves the mother, then it becomes fully formed. Was mainted, he's dafka speaking about fertilized eggs. We want to know what egg stands a chance for it developing into a chicklet. So says Rav, only if it naturally left the mother. That is when we view this egg as a fully formed egg, and it's going to have the koyach for it to eventually become a chicklet. But as just an example, if you have fertilized eggs in the hen and you chacham, you take it out, it doesn't leave the mother, it will never hatch. It will never hatch. And it's a mitzias. He's telling you a law of nature. And Lamainaf Kamina, why would Rav come and give us as a biology class? No, because it affects halacha, and that is lemeka chumemken. So if a buyer explicitly requests, Rabbi Yid, I want to buy fertilized eggs. I want to buy eggs that could and will become chicklets. And you, the seller, go ahead and you sell them eggs that even though they were fertilized, but they did not leave the mother, you shechted the mother and you took them out, then you did not sell the buyer what the buyer requested. And therefore, mekachtos means that the whole sale is rescinded. The Gemara says, should not that be obvious? We'll get that in a moment. In a story. Okay, we all accept that. The question is, why do we need an offer that? There's a big chiddush. Kihom, this is the example. This is the story. The end of the Amid. The Amar Lahu, there was a mensch that once told the vendor, there was a buyer that told the seller that I want Beye, Daf Zayin Amad Aleph on the top, the Fachya Laman. Who has Fachya eggs? The word Fachya means cackling eggs. What's like cackling eggs? When the hen lays an egg, it makes a noise. It means who has eggs that was laid by a living mother, to exclude, like we just mentioned, that if you shechted the mother and you removed even fertilized eggs, You don't want those eggs because if you want chicklets, they will never become chicklets. They will never hatch. So a person, the Fader says, who has this type of merchandise? Came along a vendor and he had other merchandise. But the minute here, especially in America, you sell what you got. Someone gave this buyer eggs, fertilized eggs, but that were found inside a hen that was geschachten, that was slaughtered. What was the issue? Mekach tos or not? So also lakamed Rav Ami and Amar lahu mekach tosu. And therefore, the whole sale is rescinded. And again, the question is, of course, like, why would that not be pshita? You did not receive what you asked for. And here, we're learning such a beautiful yisoid in mekach tos. Let me say it by heart. If a person wants to buy a certain type of item, and he was given a different item, if I wanted food, and what was given to me was food, and I wanted, let's say, better food, here are the words. If both of them have the same nutritional value, even if one is better than the other, mekach tos is limited. All the buyer can do is the difference. I paid you for, let's say, the superior. You sold me the inferior, even though I wouldn't have bought it. But now I already bought it. I want the difference of the money back. But you cannot rescind the sale because the seller says, I gave you essentially what you wanted. You wanted food. What I gave you has the same nutritional value. So that's the chiddush, that when a person made that statement, one might have thought, let's read it inside, third line from the top of the Amid, that even though the buyer says, I want beye the fachya, what he meant, now obviously he's not frum, right? But he meant was, hai la'achilo koboy. Really, he wanted to eat. Elamav, hai dika omar, the fachya, I wanted to come from a cackling mother, I wanted to come from a live mother, was mishum that serivan, eggs that are fully developed are better for eating. They're better for eating. No, he wants unfertilized eggs. He's from, he's eating, he's kosher. He wants non-fertilized eggs, but still he wants the eggs to have been naturally born from the mother and not eggs that were taken out of the mother's system after the mother was slaughtered. You know why? Because they're going to be not as serivan. They're not going to be as developed. They're not going to be as juicy. They're going to be nutritionally wise, the same oichel. And then, if that was his intention, he was tricked. And he has to be compensated. But what's that compensated? Only lemeisfale bene. Okay, that cost $1. This costs 90 cents. So for every egg, they also do you 10 cents back. But you can't go ahead and say, mekach tos, I want the wholesale rescinded. So Rav Ami said, Komash Malan, that this person said, Beye, the Fachya Laman, he said what he meant. He meant what he said. He wanted to have eggs that are going to hatch. And that's what Rav is teaching us. If an egg fertilized, it was not born by the mama, it will never hatch. Now another similar story. Oh, what's the story? That Amar Lahu, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those are coming with 6 or 7 lines from the top of the Amid. Samach Hahuda Amar Lahu, Beye the Dichra Laman, who has fertilized eggs. Now the word Dichra means a male. No, it's who has eggs that comes from a hen that had contact with a rooster. Nachamal, he said it nach twice. Beye the Dichra Laman. So what happened? The seller had unfertilized eggs. Just to know the mitzias, that for a hen to begin to develop eggs, if it was not with a rooster, just the words, if it wasn't warmed up by a male, it warms itself up by rubbing itself on the ground. And that's called in Chazal, Beye de Sofna Ma'ara, an egg. That's the word literally means an egg that's covered by earth. It means, that's the way it works, that it rubs itself on the earth, and that warmth allows it to, let's say, to ovulate. Now, this ovulation, if there's no male, will become nothing and nothing, which is why we're allowed to eat it. Say that. So he was sold. He said, I want to get eggs that are the dichra. He was given unfertilized eggs. And now, again, do you undo the sale or not? So, and Amar Lahu, here Rav Ami again says, mekach tos, to what level? The ganze mice is rescinded. And again, pshita, no. Mao the tema again, hai lachilukoboy. really, he wanted to eat. He wanted to eat. Now, fertilized eggs, this is, they're not from a person. Goy could be. The non-fertilized eggs are, a fertilized egg is richer. Oh, it's fattier, tfei. So if he wanted to eat it, even though he got something of inferior quality, but since it's essentially the same, again, this principle, we say mekachtos, meaning that then the only thing he can get back is the value of he got inferior, he wanted superior, he paid for superior, give back the difference. Kumash Mala, no, he wanted them for breeding. He wanted them for breeding, my friends. So he was given a whole different product. The wholesalers rescinded. Let's hop another few lines over here. And for those who are coming for sliches, go online and come to shul now. We're starting on time. Again, the words of Rav's statement. Upon its exit from the mama, from the hen, the eggs become fully formed. What does he mean? Listen to the words. That im yitzias ruba nigmara. Rav dafka means to say that the moment the greater part, roiv, of this egg left the mother, we already view the egg as fully formed. Lamay nafkamina. Oh, we're still coming back to Daf base. Keder Rabbi Yechanan, the Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Beitzah sheyatza ruba me'erev Yom Tov. Right, we pass like Beis Hillel. An egg that's laid on Yom Tov, the Beis Hillel says you can't eat it. It's we learned it. You can't be metaltal it. What happens if you have a hen? The hen laid roiv of the egg before Yom Tov, and this egg, instead of it exiting, decided to go back in, and then it comes back out nachamol on Yom Tov. Was it laid on Yom Tov or was it laid out of Yom Tov? That's what he means. That's what he means. That the chazra, it went back in and then it was laid on Yom Tov. Rav is saying muteres la'achla b'Yom Tov. That's what he means in im yitziyasa nigmara. Im yitziyasa means since it already exited, ruba kakula, you can eat it. 1 second, you look at the words, it's almost mashma the opposite, right? Im yitziyasa and a chanami. Maybe it's the opposite. Omar, no, that my imitzias nigmara. What did Rav mean? Dafke imitzias kula nigmara. Imitzias kula in aval ruba loy. Rav actually is arguing from an Rabbi Yechanan. Ulafukim in Rabbi Yechanan. So if an egg exited, I don't care if 99%, if it did not fully leave the mother, if for whatever reason it went back in, then it came back out on Yom Tov. You, according to the last understanding, and I was saying, this is the Beitzah, Shanal de Yom Tov, that Beis Hillel says, Loi te achel. Ha, gewaldig. Having with one egg. Gebal cook was over here. To be continued.
Rabbi, I was yesterday, I learned the Talmud about this chelboin.
Oh.
How do you say chelboin in English? The yolk and the white.
The yolk and the white. Chelmoin and chelboin. I call it white. Danny Fishman knows the fancy word. What's the word for the white? There's a fancy word over here.
Maybe is it the albumin?
Albumin. Yeah. I'm afraid to say it because he's going to right away tell me about it.
That you need both. Only the Rashi says like you need to.
Okay, good. We're learning Gemara Rashi. Save it.